Welcome to Mr. Biz Radio, biz talk for biz owners. If you're ready to stop faking the funk and take your business onward and upward, this show is for you. And now, here's Mr. Biz, Ken Wentworth.
All right, welcome to another episode of Mr. Biz Radio with me, Mr. Biz, Ken Wentworth. And this week, we're going to talk about woman power. Let's just call it that. Let's just summarize it, woman power. We're going to talk about challenges faced by women entrepreneurs. We're going to talk about, honestly, the being a good girl and fitting in versus being, acting as an empowered woman, even in your corporate career, even as an entrepreneur, business owner as well. And we're going to talk also about our guest book. I love the title. It's kind of funny. It's ironic. Unhappy Achiever. So we're going to talk about that. Our guest this week is Ashley Jordan. She has done many things throughout her life. She's been a feminist activist, licensed attorney, public speaker, and stay-at-home mother. Most notably, however, she's a well-published journalist with her works appearing in the New York Times, Washington Post, The Guardian, and Huffington Post, among others. And she is the author of, as I mentioned, Unhappy Achiever, Rejecting the Good Girl Image, Reclaiming the Joy of Inner Fulfillment. Today, she lives in Milwaukee, Wisconsin with her 3 children. Ashley, welcome to Mr. Biz Radio.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you because, we have plenty of women guests and everything, but I was thinking back, we've not, we talked about women entrepreneurs and things like that, but we've not really, I think, tackled it from this angle of, sort of even more so empowerment, maybe once or twice, but, almost 500 episodes of the show now. It's been a while. And so I wanted to kind of dive into that. Before we get into that, though, as I mentioned in the outset or in the intro, you've done a lot of different things. Walk us through that a little bit. Tell us about your career, your entrepreneurial journey, if you would.
Sure. Well, speaking to the title of my book, Unhappy Achiever, I knew from the time I graduated high school that I wanted to go to law school because I asked myself what would make my parents and grandparents proud. And I wasn't great at math and science, but I was great with words and public speaking. So I was like, okay, I'm going to law school. So that is exactly what I did. I went to law school and I hated it.
Okay.
Every day I wanted to turn the car around, but ever dutiful daughter, I finished, I got my law degree, and I actually became an assistant district attorney prosecuting domestic violence cases. And then I worked in social work for a while, and then I became a stay-at-home mother of 3. And then I decided to start writing again. And so, like so many, about 5 or 6 years ago, I started blogging. And, suddenly someone mentioned to me, why don't you try to get your work published? And I had no idea how to do that. But I took a few online classes and did some internet research. And lo and behold, I became a published journalist and started publishing for major publications and news media outlets, and then transitioned to writing my first book. And so I think what's great about my story for entrepreneurs everywhere is that when you are really stepping into your gifts in terms of, I think that we all have superpowers as personally and professionally. And sometimes both those superpowers translate between the two. But when you are really using your superpowers in the world, it doesn't matter how long you're sort of out of it or not using them, they're always waiting for you to step right back in. And I think that was true for me with writing. And that's what, brings me here with you today.
So actually, I have to ask, so backing up, you talk about your experience going to law school. So, and you said you're being a dutiful daughter. Do you have lawyers in your family? Is that what it was? Like your father, your grandfather, someone in your family that was your mom, maybe that was an attorney, then you felt sort of maybe the nudge to go in that direction?
So actually, it was exactly the opposite.
Okay.
I come from a very blue collar family, and I had 2 working class parents who sort of worked their way up to middle class and, you know, put their hopes and dreams in terms of my education and sending me to college. And so I felt a tremendous responsibility to make my family, given their background and how hard they worked, proud, right? And I was the first woman in my family to graduate college before getting married and having children. So it was a big deal to not only graduate college, but to go to law school.
Well, it's interesting you say that because so I'm from a similar background. I was first in my family of anybody to graduate college, and the interesting part about it is, so I'm guessing because you mentioned earlier you're not good at math or science. So was it like I want to be a doctor or a lawyer, and maybe the doctor side's not really going to fit me?
It was exactly that, as a matter of fact. It was,
Okay.
what would be the unhappy achiever, right? What would be the most impressive thing for a good girl to do? And since doctor didn't seem like a good option for me, it was like, well, I'm good at writing and public speaking. I'll go be a lawyer. But I never really asked myself what I wanted to do. I was so focused on what I thought I should do, for those around me to earn validation and approval and sort of meet those expectations that were set for me early on. And I think that's true for so many women. I think we feel often an intense pressure to be very good girls who grow up to be good women doing the things they think they should do rather than the things their hearts call them to do.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely see that. I mean, my hometown still, it's a small town, steel mill town, all blue collar, and the women typically have a different path of it's the like 1950s of it's advanced, but it still definitely leans that way compared to a lot of, larger cities and things where the women find a good husband who has a good job, and then they have kids and they're stay at home and they're going to take care of their kids. And then that's kind of their, their career as a stay at home mom. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel like a lot of those women probably have other things in their heart that they're passionate about that they'd like to do, but they're like, no, this is kind of what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to stay in my lane and, like you said, be the good girl as opposed to maybe following their passion a little bit.
Yes, that's such a great point, and I'm glad that you brought that up because I always wanted to be a mother, and I feel very privileged and grateful to have had the opportunity to be a stay-at-home mother for my three children when they were little. But I have to say, it's also sort of a myth that we're told that for every woman, being a full-time mother and caregiver to your children and a full-time wife is enough to fulfill you. They are wonderful, wonderful roles. And I know every mother is grateful to be one, but it's not, for many of us, it's not enough. We do have desires and callings outside of marriage and motherhood. And that was true for me. When I was staying home full time, intellectually and creatively, I really suffered and I was starving. And in fact, it was one of the loneliest times of my life when my kids were little because I really didn't have that intellectual or creative outlet for myself. And I didn't understand how much I needed that until I didn't have it.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. I could see that. I mean, because especially after you've gone through law school, gone through all that stuff, you're an assistant DA, you're deep into that. I'm not sure at what point during your career you had your children or whatever, but maybe you're in your social work, whatever it is, and all of a sudden you kind of pivot away from that to like now I'm full-time mom, and like you said, great thing, but man, I would imagine you'd really miss, some of those things, even just the intellectual interactions. No offense to young kids, but they're not exactly intellectually stimulating all the time. So we're going to hit a break here again. We're talking with Ashley Jordan. You can find her on Facebook and Instagram, also on her website, ashjordan.com. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Come back after the break on Mr. Biz Radio.
If you would like to reach hundreds of thousands of business owners every week, Mr. Biz Radio can help. Our show airs globally 7 days a week for more than 25 hours across several internet radio stations, plus 20 plus podcast platforms. Also, video exposure on the new exclusive Mr. Biz Network streaming channel, which gets blasted to 100 plus streaming platforms, and the Mr. Biz YouTube channel, and our 350,000 social media followers multiple times every week. Join Mr. Biz Nation as an advertiser by emailing us at info@MrBizSolutions.com.
Attention, Mr. Biz Nation. We have an exclusive offer just for you. Get lifetime access to scarcity countdown timers and logic links for only $69. Yes, you heard it right. Only $69. These tools will add urgency to your email campaigns and website pages, helping you increase conversions, sales, and capture more leads. Don't miss this incredible opportunity. Visit GetPulseTools.com now and take your business to new heights.
Check out all 3 of Mr. Biz's best-selling books at MrBizBooks.com. Now, once again, here's Mr. Biz.
All right, welcome back to the show. Again, talking with Ashley Jordan this week. So, Ashley, I wanted to dive back in. I want to talk about your book here in a second, but before we do that, I'm curious. I was thinking about this during the break. You mentioned during the first segment when you were kind of deciding what you wanted to do college-wise and decided the doctor route wasn't good for you. You mentioned you were good at public speaking. Obviously, you had to make that sort of assessment, self-assessment. You had to be in high school, right? Because you're deciding on college. Did you naturally have that ability? Did you develop that? Were you naturally like a really outgoing kid and kind of figured that out? Or I'm kind of curious because I was super introverted, never liked speaking in front of people. Like I've changed significantly over in my adult life, obviously. But man, back then, I'd rather run out in front of a bus than get up in front of people and speak. So I'm curious as someone in high school that had that, already had that ability.
Sure. Yeah. I think I really started to recognize that in myself just through, I think the way that a lot of kids do when you're doing presentations in school and things like that. And then same with writing, just through my writing classes. But I also always say that, and I write about this in the book too, if you want to know, where your superpowers are, look back and see what you loved to do when you were 8 years old, because when you were 8 years old, you did what you did for just the sake of sheer pleasure and joy, right? Without a boss on your back or the expectations of your family or peers. You did what you did because it made your heart sing. And so for me, when I was 8 years old, I used to, ride my bike up and down a dead end street by my home. I was kind of an only child, and I would weave in and out of driveways on my purple Huffy bike, telling stories to myself. And
Okay.
now that's exactly what I am, right? Whether writing or speaking, I'm a storyteller. And so I can absolutely see that reflected in my 8-year-old self. And so I always say that looking back on that version of us often gives us the truest glimpse of who we are and what we're here to do.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good segue. So you transition during your professional career and you become a journalist and you're writing for all these prestigious different media sources. And then you say, what led you to say, I think maybe book is the next step?
It's so funny when I get asked this question, because I think, a huge part of writing this book was to demonstrate how we go from guiding our decisions and our behaviors based on external expectations, validation, and approval and people pleasing, to really reconnecting with our own heart and inner wisdom and inner compass to guide us in terms of how we move through the world as women and entrepreneurs. And so for me, rewiring that connection of my own inner knowing and intuition and truth, it was an automatic moment of, it's time to write a book. And I just knew in an instant that it was time. And had you asked me 3 months before, 6 months before, I would have said absolutely not. But when it was time, I knew it. And so I started writing, and it flowed without interruption. In fact, I started writing the first chapter in November 2021, and I had the first draft completed on August 5th of 2022. So less than a year. And I think that that's what happens when we are following our hearts and our own inner wisdom. We are often guided as women and entrepreneurs on exactly the right path for us at exactly the right time. And we're able to flow in that with ease instead of, stress and strain. And at least that's been the biggest lesson for me.
Well, it's interesting you say that because as you said it, I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, how many people have a path or feel pressure from their family to write a book? I mean, unless you're one of your parents or someone in your family important to you in your family was some prestigious author. Not many parents, I would guess, say, hey, little Susie, when they're 12, like you get older, you should write a book. Like, as opposed to like, we want you to be a doctor or a lawyer, that sort of pressure. And so it is, I mean, in some form or fashion, and tangentially, at least a little bit, of sort of following your own passion, like we've been talking about, because no one was necessarily putting that pressure on you. I'm guessing not, and certainly not as a young girl or even in your early 20s.
Right. Absolutely not. In fact, despite writing being so natural to me and being a storyteller from the time that I was young, being a writer never entered my consciousness as an option, right? And so I think that, what I've found is that I always say we won't miss what's meant for us. And I think that when we're really tuned in with our own path as entrepreneurs, you know, everything sort of falls into place. And, I was asked and encouraged to write a book actually after I published my piece for the Washington Post. I had some folks suggest, this would be a great subject for a book. You should jump on this. But everything in me was like, no, it's not right. And so I didn't. And, when the idea and the title for this book came about, I just knew it was the book that I was meant to write, and the scope was so much more broad than the book I was encouraged to write, a year or two prior. And so I think when you're really walking the path that's most aligned for you, all of the pieces fall into place at exactly the right time in exactly the right ways.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and I definitely can relate to that. There's a little bit of a pressure on you here. We only got about 2 minutes left in the segment here,
Yes.
but it's a good segue. Give us like maybe a 2-minute preview or a minute 45 preview of what's in the book. What can people expect from the book, and what can they learn, and what kind of lessons can they learn?
Sure. So, Unhappy Achiever is this lens that I realized I could view my whole life through. Like so many women, I realized that, I suffered from an internal lack of maternal love and nourishment. And so I thought I could earn love and approval by doing really big, good things. And so I was this woman who got to 37 years old and realized that I'd lived my whole life trying to go from one box checked off on my lifetime list of to-dos to the next, to the next, to the next, thinking that when I got to, the next goal or the next accomplishment or the next thing, I would feel happy, fulfilled, content, satisfied, all of the things that were told. And yet I didn't, the farther I went, the more I accomplished, the emptier I felt. And so Unhappy Achiever is the story of realizing that what I was looking for outside of me could only be found inside of me. And what it looks like when you've built this picture perfect life externally based on expectations and approval and people pleasing. And it's externally perfect, but it's inwardly broken. And you have to go about deconstructing this life that you built from the outside in order to reconstruct a life from the inside out that aligns with who you are and your heart's deepest desires and your most aligned path personally and professionally. And so it's the journey that I've been on, which is one in which literally every major aspect of my life is different than it was 4.5 years ago, with the exception of my 3 children. So that is the story.
Interesting. Guys, go check it out. Again, the title of the book is Unhappy Achiever, Rejecting the Good Girl Image and Reclaiming the Joy of Inner Fulfillment. Go check that out. It's on anywhere you can find books, obviously, Amazon, etc. You can follow Ashley on Instagram and Facebook. You can also go out to her website, ashjordan.com, or unhappyachiever.com. You can go there as well. Come back after the break. We're going to talk about girl power.
How would you like to have direct access to Mr. Biz to help you run your business more profitably and more efficiently? At MrBizSolutions.com, you get live access to not only Mr. Biz, but also several of his hand-picked and trusted business experts, each with 20 plus years of experience to help you optimally manage and grow your business. That's just the start of where Mr. Biz Solutions begins. Learn more at MrBizSolutions.com. That's MrBizSolutions.com.
Attention, Mr. Biz Nation. We have an exclusive offer just for you. Get lifetime access to scarcity countdown timers and logic links for only $69. Yes, you heard it right. Only $69. These tools will add urgency to your email campaigns and website pages, helping you increase conversions, sales, and capture more leads. Don't miss this incredible opportunity. Visit getpulsetools.com now and take your business to new heights.
Got a question for Mr. Biz you want answered on air? Email it to info@MrBizSolutions.com. Now, once again, here's Mr. Biz.
All right, welcome back to the show. It is time to talk about some girl power. Okay, so I'm a girl dad. As anyone who watches or listens to the show regularly knows, I've got 3 daughters, a wife. We had a female cat. I finally had to say, okay, we had to get a male dog. I got to get some more male energy in the house. Okay, so I'm all about this, and very much so encouraging and helping, hopefully helping shape our daughters into, kind of thinking outside of that stereotypical box, the good girl thing. I think a lot what Ashley's talking about here. And, Ashley, I've seen some of the things during when I was prepping for the show. You talk about making feminine values more mainstream. Tell us a little bit what you mean about that.
Sure. Well, I think that, often the values that are most typically valued and encouraged in the public domain are what we would consider traditionally masculine values, right?
Yeah.
Leadership, decisiveness, power, strength, all of those things. And traditional feminine values are things like intuition, love, compassion, right? Softness, empathy. And so I think what we're really after in terms of an ideal balance is a combination of both, not one or the other. And I think what makes truly powerful leaders, whether men or women or anyone in between, is to find that balance internally of both. There is a time, absolutely, as a leader for decisiveness, but there's also a time as a leader to pause when you don't know and to wait until you do. And very few decisions in leadership are so urgent that a decision has to be made immediately. And so that's one great example that I like to use, because for me, one of the most powerful lessons that I've learned in the past 4.5 years, personally and professionally, is that when I don't know an answer and I don't know what to do, the best, wisest thing I can do is to wait, because I will know. And I wait for the answer to come and I don't act. And that say until I do know definitively. And so that one piece of wisdom has helped me make infinitely better decisions personally and professionally. And so that's one example that I like to use. But I also think that it is tremendously strong when leaders demonstrate traditionally feminine values like love, empathy, and compassion with their coworkers, their employees, their teammates. And I think that more than ever, those values go a long way in the workplace.
Yeah, I think it's important to your point to have, you should have a lot more tools as a leader in your toolbox than just, I'll use the analogy of, the male, stereotypical male, the hammer and the saw. And you also need, other tools in your toolbox to be able, because not everyone responds. Some people want to be kicked in the rear end to get motivated, right? Other people, you kind of pull that card and they're going to, go into the fetal position and like just melt, right? They're not going to respond to that well. And I feel like I always use sports analogies, but I feel like there's if I'm a basketball coach and the only thing I know how to coach is for the offense to be like run and gun offense. All we're going to do is run fast breaks every time. And then you end up with a team that are older players. And so they're not as fast. They're not as athletic. You try to run you have that one toolbox, run and gun offense, and then you don't have the right team to run that. You're going to be massively not successful, right? Whereas I think as a leader, you have to be able to say, okay, we had a young athletic team in the past. I'm going to run this run and gun, but now our team has changed, right? We're a little bit older now. We're not as athletic. So now we have to change how we do things. And I think so many times I find leaders, even when I was in the corporate world at JP Morgan, you have leaders that are like these coaches I'm talking about, and they know how to lead one way. I'm either going to be the rah-rah guy who kicks you in the butt and is on your butt all the time, or I'm going to be super soft and I really don't hold people accountable. And I feel like there's the people that are great leaders had a combination of both. So I think what you're
Mhm.
saying is 100,000% correct.
Mhm. And I think it's so important, and it's not just for women, it's for all of us, right?
Of
And
course.
so, and I also think there's been, y- this culture for women where we felt like some of those more traditional feminine values weren't okay for us to
Hmm.
embody, that we would
Right.
seem weak or be taken less seriously.
Yeah.
And I certainly, you know, was an example of that in the past. But what I've truly found in the past 4.5 years is that as a woman who has embraced her feminine and her feminine values personally and professionally more than ever, I've never felt more powerful or more myself, whether at home with my kids or in the workplace. And so I think that for a lot of women, being that in the workplace is their most authentic expression. And I think authenticity is power. And so if we are not able to be in the workplace and be the most ourselves, especially when it comes to expressing and being proud to embody traditionally feminine values, then we're unable to be the truest expression of ourselves, which hinders us automatically places us at a disadvantage. So I think by embracing feminine values, not just in women, but in men as well as leaders, we will do everyone a greater service.
Yeah, I think, one of the things I saw also, and again, it's kind of obviously isolated examples, but, at a Fortune 15 company like JP Morgan in a predominantly male field, let's be honest, is some of the females as they're rising up the corporate ladder would take on this sort of more male, demonstrate more
Mhm.
male characteristics, right? Be a lot more aggressive, things like that. And I always wondered, was that their like natural personality, or are they trying to morph into what they think is what they need to be successful in that particular environment?
Absolutely. And I think the important point is that it's not about masculine or feminine or being one or the other. It's about everyone being able to be the most themselves. We are the most powerful leaders when we are embodying our authenticity and the truest, most aligned expression of ourselves as leaders, as entrepreneurs. And so for some of us, that may be embodying, more masculine characteristics. For some of us, it may, like me, it may be more feminine. For some, it might be, a different mix. It doesn't matter. It's about freedom. It's about valuing the feminine, the masculine, and everything in between equally so that we can all show up and be the right balance, the right mix of expression and values and leadership qualities that is the most unique and true for us. And I think it's different for everybody. And I think it's supposed to be. If I tried to be just like you in the workplace, it wouldn't work because I'm not,
Hmm.
right? So I think that also, we can tell what's authentic and we can tell what's not. And the worst thing, the most disempowering thing for all of us is when we feel like we're forced to fit in a box, right? And for women, if that's the box of the good girl, that box is so narrow and suffocating. We weren't born to be good girls. We were born to be empowered women and empowered entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think another thing, agree again, agree 100%. Another thing that I want to touch on is we're running out of time here, but is as a leader, when you're building your team, you also need to keep all these things in mind. You don't want a bunch of aggressive people like and if you're an aggressive person especially, you need to balance that out with people that have more empathy and more caring attitudes and things like that to have a much more well-balanced team. I think overall that'll lead to more success. We're out of time here, Ashley, but I really appreciate you coming on. Fascinating show.
Thank you. I had a great time. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a fantastic rest of your week. And don't forget, as always, cash flow is king.
To become part of Mr. Biz Nation, follow him on all social media platforms or never miss a show by going to MrBizRadio.com. If you prefer free video content, visit the Mr. Biz YouTube channel or check out his streaming channel, which is available on 100 plus streaming platforms at MrBizNetwork.com.